This is Heard Between the Ears, a podcast about candid conversations and human contradictions. We're your hosts, Kendra and Anna.
Contradictions, and we're your hosts. I'm Kendra.
And I'm Anna. Welcome to the
I think that's
podcast. We're professional.
Very professional.
This is the beauty of it. This is much
Mhm.
like it's like we would sit down and have a conversation anyway, and we probably start with some sort of like laughing moment or
Mhm.
way to settle in.
Mhm.
Heard Between the Ears. We're here. Episode 0/episode 1.
We are so excited to be recording this podcast. This is actually something that really was an Anna thing, and then it became an Anna and Kendra thing.
I'm so grateful. So grateful to have a counterpart.
Mhm. So because this is the intro episode, we want to focus on introducing ourselves and talking about the why of our podcast and what you can expect coming up. So Anna, you want to start?
Happy to. I'm Anna. I am grappling with the fact that I'm towards my mid to late 30s. I just moved to Colorado by way of Cincinnati about almost 3 months ago. I knew Kendra from not only Cincinnati, but the fitness community in Cincinnati. So something that people may or may not know about me is I worked for myself for upwards of 10 plus years, almost 12 years, I think, in the fitness industry. I was a full-time Pilates and personal trainer. Met Kendra, fell in love with her. We had this friendship that just blossomed by way of connecting with each other, and like having these open, candid conversations. And it was just like a very organic friendship, I feel like.
I
So that's
agree.
kind of me in a nutshell, I guess, if you will. My 2-second tour.
I'm Kendra, not a Cincinnati native, though I live there now, here, because I'm in Cincinnati. Originally from Atlanta, grew up there, moved to Cincinnati for grad school, worked here for a couple of years. Then I moved to DC to go back to school. I did some work there as well, and now I'm back in Cincinnati. I can't escape Cincinnati for some reason, even though I am really trying. But I am here for now, and I am making the most of it. Another fun fact about me is I am a middle child. So some people think that they know a lot about middle child just based on the stereotypes, but I would like to think that I am not the stereotypical middle child, or maybe I am, and that's just being me being a middle child. Who knows?
I am the youngest of 3, so I'm the baby, and I feel like I play in that role very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I probably do.
I don't
I
think,
probably
well,
do.
I don't know that I think of you as a middle child when I think of a stereotypical middle child, like somebody that gets lost in the shuffle.
I could tell you stories. Me
Ah!
being lost in the shuffle.
I'm the baby and I'm the only girl, so I'm a double whammy. I am
Yeah.
like, I think, and there's an age difference between my brothers and I. My middle brother's 7 years older than me, and my oldest is 9 years older than me. So I'm almost the worst of it, because I feel like I could potentially be categorized as like an only child as well, since they were so much older than me. So
Right.
think of me as that kind of a conundrum.
I love it. I love it.
Middle child and baby. One of these episodes will have to bring an oldest of the bunch on and we can chat family dynamics.
Yeah,
See what happens.
definitely.
See if it shows up in conversation.
Probably. Probably.
That's kind of the who we are a little bit. Do you have anything else to elaborate on? I feel like we could talk about who we are for the entire time, but
Yeah. I feel like I think we're going to use the podcast for you to get to know us more. But I think that's all I want you to know right now.
ooh, yes, yes. Keep the mystery alive.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so we kind of touched on this briefly. Why the podcast? If it
Especially when
started
there's
out,
so many.
there's
There's so
so
many
many.
podcasts.
There's so many. And kind of as you touched on, it started out as a me thing. And I think I closely just it's being a solo podcast, a one person podcast with the potential of bringing other guests on just didn't feel like the right, I don't think it felt like the right balance for me. I needed a counterpart. And so you were kind of helping me with this from the ground up. And I think I just looked at you and with pleading eyes, and I was like, Kendra, you've been in this anyway. Let's do it together. Do you remember it differently?
No, that's exactly how it happened.
So I had this idea that was like, oh, I forget where I was when I was thinking about this. I mean, this has all kind of come to be by way of me leaving Cincinnati and moving to Colorado. And I think in finding myself in my identity, living on my own, not to say that I wasn't living on my own in Cincinnati, but truly being alone in Colorado. I mean, I know people who live here, and I know you can relate to this as well, moving to a new place. But I think I was just like, what am I going to do with all this free time that I have? And so I was thinking about starting something, and then that kind of snowballed into this idea of self-discovery and identity. And I think it brought up so many questions, and in those questions I was like, well, I'm not this way and I'm not that way. And being in a society these days where there's almost labels for everything, and it's kind of like, well, why do we have to label ourselves one way or another? It feels like we're all contradictions to some degree. And then you and I kind of started chatting about that, and I feel like it additionally just snowballed from there, and we just had a lot of really great upfront dialogue about, ways to identify.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said there, and I want to add, because some of these topics that we're going to be talking about and covering over the next how many ever weeks, months, years, is kind of heavy,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
we both don't have a fully formed opinion about some of these topics, and so we wanted to have a candid conversation, have a real conversation about these topics because they're ever present in our lives, in our society, and we just wanted to learn together about
Right.
how we can approach this life of contradictions.
Yes. And blanket statement, neither one of us, I don't identify as a doctor, a therapist, a licensed professional in any of this. I am
No.
merely a human who, again, is just interested in exploring, dialoguing about stuff that, to your point, maybe sometimes is heavy. Also, to the other point, on the other end of the spectrum, knowing who you and I are, we can be silly
Mm-hmm.
at the same time too. So like, again, total like a contradiction that just kind of pops up as something, appearing to be showing up in two completely opposite ways. So heavy and
And I
silly.
and I love a good dialogue. Like, I am an introvert by nature, so, and that doesn't mean I am shy or stay away from people. an introvert just basically means that the way that you how you get your energy, how you recoup your energy. And for me, recouping my energy is with alone time, smaller groups of people, good dialogue. And so that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because we are such a divided world. And it's like we're supposed to either be all this or all that, but that's not how we are as humans.
Totally.
We're a little bit of both. And so I want to be able to have this dialogue to show that it's not one all or nothing. It's usually gray. Everything we do is gray.
Yes, everything we do is gray. Everything we do is gray. So that's kind of a little bit of like the background of the podcast, or why the podcast. I think it's coming from like a genuine place of curiosity, right? So why Heard Between the Ears?
It just sounded cool.
It sounded cool. Yes. Plus we so when the idea formed, it was kind of like there's so much stuff that's happening literally between two ears, like all of the thoughts and emotions and feelings and just everything that comes out or in within us is kind of formed within our brain. Our brain is that central engine, and so it kind of fit in that way too. So other than Heard Between the Ears being cool,
but it's also because it's between two ears, right?
It's between four ears.
It's between 4 ears. True.
2 ears.
But
my
if you're
set
listening
and yours.
to this, but if you are, as the audience member, are listening to this, it's between your 2 ears.
Yes. We're so clever.
So clever.
So clever. So it's everything. It's like an all-encompassing title, and I think I mean, just a little thought nugget there. It's like how you react to something, whether you're like deeply thinking about it from more of like a cerebral standpoint, or if it's something that's more of an emotional reaction. So again, like the way that you respond to information, whether it's hard-hitting facts and you're spitting out an answer, or you take it in, you hear it, digest it, and react emotionally. I'm more of an emotional reactor.
I mean, we all can be, right?
Yeah. I don't have much of a poker face. This is something that I've come to. Yeah, no, this is something that I thought I had a really great poker face until life kept giving me situations where it was like, don't react. And it was literally just plastered across my face.
So wait, when did you get to this realization? Because I've always known that I do not have a good poker face since a child.
I think, okay, so as a child, I feel like I probably didn't have a very good poker face, but mid to adulthood, like teenage to adulthood, I think in that typical fashion of like, I know better. I can do, if you can do anything, I can do better. I can have a poker face. But it turns out I just didn't really have a poker face. A lot of this honestly was happening when people would give me gifts. And I love gifts. I love thinking about giving a gift that is just like really heartfelt, and it's because you want to, it's not because you have to. And I feel like in instances when it's like Christmas time and you have to give somebody a gift. And so I would unwrap a gift, and across my face, I would just be like, say thank you, say thank you, say thank you. But it was just like, thank you. Like if that was the reaction that I had, but I didn't react that way, but I reacted that way.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, there's more where that came from, but we'll save that for
another episode.
We'll save that for another episode. When did you know that your poker face wasn't you said you felt that way always? You couldn't. hide it was always
No,
written
it
across your
was
face?
always written across my face because someone would always tell me fix your face, or like the way that I reacted would like the other person would just like, oh, I mean, or like try to backtrack if it was a
Mm,
bad thing. Like if my face was not like, if it was a bad thing, then they would like backtrack. So I always knew,
yeah, yeah.
always knew because the
I
reactions I was getting, I was like, okay.
I think with that for me too, personally, it's like I'm a people pleaser. And so I'm trying to react in a way where I want to make sure that I'm not hurting somebody else's feelings. So it'd be like, thank you. Like, but yeah, it's like thank you for the gesture, but this isn't do you even know me?
Do you even know me?
Yeah. All right. So we've kind of shared a little bit about like the background of ourselves and these different contradictions and different types of awareness that are showing up. I think in having these conversations, we've kind of touched on it a little bit. Like, what's your expectation of the podcast?
I think for me, it's just a continuous learning process. I love to learn. And being able to dissect some of these contradictions with you and to share some knowledge that I have, you sharing the knowledge you have, or even me learning something new or some a way that I didn't think about that specific contradiction before, I think will really help me just be a better person. And so I think my expectation is just a continuous conversation, a new learning, creating a new learning path in my brain, but also just being, I think with this conversation about contradictions, it also forces me to be great, to extend grace, not only to myself, but also
Mm-hmm.
to others. Because like it's easy to be caught in this trap where like you should have done this or that was wrong and blah 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 blah. But like remembering that we all operate in gray. We're not all good and bad. Not everything is all right and wrong. And so being able to be extend grace to everyone who are all, we're all walking contradiction. So that grace will really help me to be um, kind to everyone else that I meet versus just kind of judgmental, which I can be sometimes.
I can also be judgmental. I would agree with you. I think the friendships that I have come to be so lucky to have as an adult have come from a place of vulnerability. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is just something that feels really good to an extent about being vulnerable with complete strangers. Like
Mm-hmm.
kind of letting the guard down a bit, being more, again, candid, sharing from a place of, well, I think I can learn something here, coming from a place of curiosity, coming from a place of just wanting something better for everyone. I think the two of us were just coming from the right place. And again, because neither one of us are medical professionals, coming from a place of just honesty and like, I'm not claiming to know 1,000% about anything. I'm literally just sharing my life experience in the hope that this also helps somebody else or
Mm-hmm.
teaches me something about you that I didn't know about already, teaches me something about myself that I didn't know already. I mean, the conversations that you and I have had in preparation for launching the podcast, I think have just been really revealing. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's something that's really cool about exploring that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. It's a learning journey.
it is a learning journey. So this is Kendra and I, we chatted about when we were talking about what we wanted from the podcast and what kind of nuggets of information we wanted to put into the podcast. One of these things was I don't know if I'm supposed to share this or not, but I'm sharing it. Is this secret question? So neither one of us knows what the other person is going to ask, but in each episode we want to have some sort of question that comes up that the other person didn't know about, and again, just keeping things honest and real, and having the conversation that we would have even if we weren't in a podcast setting. So my not so secret question for you is, when in life did you start to become self-aware?
That is a very good question.
Isn't that a good one?
That is such a good question.
I was so proud of myself. I was like, I've got it. I've got the question. I think it's a good place for where to start as well. So as you're thinking about the answer, like when for you did this self-awareness kind of begin?
I think for me, like, okay, so I think it's two parts for me. So for one, I was always a little self-aware as a kid just because I was different. And so when you're different, you know for sure, like you're very aware of that. And so I have told you before, but I was bullied in school. And so I feel like I was always self-aware about like how I was coming off to people and trying to like not be as different as everyone thought I was. So I think that sense of self-awareness was always with me because of that experience as a child. But I think when I became like self-aware, like more self-aware about like how I'm treating people and how like selfish I can be and all these other things, is when I started therapy. Therapy will gather you all together if you have a really good therapist. She read me for filth the first session. My therapist read me to filth, and I said, okay, well, take all of my money. Just take all of my money.
Yeah.
And I think on this, it's been 3 years now. This past February has been 3 years, but this journey of becoming just more of me and who I am and being vulnerable with people, which is something that I have never really done in my entire adult childhood life. And so learning to be vulnerable also forces you to be more self-aware about how you come off to people. And so like understanding that everyone perceives me differently, I can be the villain in someone's story and be the hero in someone else's story. So also understanding how those dynamic plays out, even if I feel like I didn't do anything wrong. And I think my therapy journey really helped me become, I'm not saying that I'm fully self-aware. I think there's always some growth there for me, but therapy has really changed the way that I perceive myself and how I interact with the world. So that was a good question.
Thank you. And I think I resonate with that answer. I feel like I also had the experience where I started therapy back in like, I think it was close to maybe 2018, something like that. For me, it was more of like a life event. So I was previously married. This is something that maybe our listeners don't know about me. Maybe they do. I was previously married, and when I was having some personal challenges, so for me it was like a life event where I was like, I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to somebody who isn't in my family group, isn't in my friend group, like knows nothing about me other than the sense of like being an unbiased third party. And that's truly like where it all began for me. But I feel like I'm on my second therapist now. My first therapist, great from a standpoint of like, let's get the ball rolling, get me talking about things. But my second therapist has truly been the person I think who has given me immense self-awareness and like the desire to learn more about myself, even the parts of myself that I'm not proud of. You know, she kind of like pulled the curtain back a little bit to the darkest sides of myself and has me ask the questions, the hard hitting questions. And I feel like there's a lot of value in that. And to your point, to my point of vulnerability, like being vulnerable with yourself, I think, is the hardest thing, because I feel like it's always a challenge to admit, to ourselves our worst fears, what we
Mhm.
actually want in life, what are we going to do to get there, what kind of people do we want to surround ourselves with, all the things that,
Mhm.
you know, it could go one way or another. And we're at the end of the day, I feel like you have to look out for yourself. If you're not
Yeah.
taking care of yourself, then you're not going to show up as that best person for other people. So,
Right. Right.
I mean, self-awareness, it's like, whew, if we could all be so lucky as to be self-aware.
And have you ever encountered someone who's very much not self-aware?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I guess I know that I have encountered people who are not self-aware, but maybe what I will say to the flip of that is at my perception of
Mhm.
self-awareness. So maybe
Yeah.
there's a person who is very self-aware, but the way that they show up in social situations, maybe they're not ready to be vulnerable with me. And so I'll just like categorize them as
Mhm.
one way and they could completely be another way. So I guess
Mhm.
it's an unfair assumption, but for the purposes of your question, I do feel like I have come across people who lack self-awareness or pretend to be self-aware and maybe
And
are
they're
not.
not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is almost the worst kind.
I know.
I feel like I'd rather encounter somebody who's just like la di da, like
Yeah.
doesn't, yeah.
Mhm.
But
Agreed.
so
Okay, are you ready for my
hopefully,
question?
yeah, yeah, yeah. What I want to caveat all of that with, though, is like in our conversation, hopefully our listeners are also maybe thinking about self-awareness when this showed up for themselves and
Yeah.
what the definition of self-awareness is to each of us.
Yeah.
But I am ready for your question, to answer your
I
question.
like it. Okay, okay, okay. All right. So, what have you heard recently that caused you to question what you know?
Oh, you and I both had good questions this first go around. I need you to read it to me again.
Okay. What have you heard recently that caused you to question what you know?
So I started a new job recently. And and I am I'm still in the fitness industry, but I'm doing that on a very part-time basis. In this new job, I am going back to what I did when I came out of college, which is more of this like project management. And I am at this stage in my life where I am 37 years old and I feel like I am starting over in almost this entry level position. And so there has come a lot of feelings up for me where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I am going into like a spiral. Should I be doing this? Did I choose the right thing? And the amount of reassurance that I've gotten from my friends and family, they're like, Anna, you've got this. And just hearing it from somebody else that I need to trust that that is within me has given me hope that I have made the right decision. But I'm also somebody who needs validation. And so hearing validation from other people that I am doing a good job or that I know what I'm doing or I know how to show up, I feel like that's the thing. I need to lean into that more to regain confidence because
Mhm.
I feel like I am a very confident person, but we all have these moments of doubt and I feel like it definitely happens. I know it happens to me at the moment of uncertainty or an emotion that is not desirable shows up. Those are the times that I need to lean back into like trusting my gut instinct.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how I got here to Colorado, even to begin with, was the fact that I was just like, I don't think I'm intended to be in Cincinnati anymore. I think I'm intended
Mhm.
to be somewhere else. The mountains are literally calling and I must go. And so, therefore, I picked up my life and my dog and I moved to Colorado with so much uncertainty. but like every step along the way, all of these like signs kept showing up for me that it was the right choice for me. And so I think hearing from family and friends, not only in the sense of like this job, but also being here in Colorado, there is some greater purpose. I am on the journey to coming to realization of whatever my purpose is to be here, being here. Maybe it's just for me. It could be that it's just for me. That is the reason that I need to be here is because I need to be here.
And that is a good enough reason for me.
Yeah. And now I'm like, did I even answer the question? I think I answered the question, right? Kind of.
So I think what you heard,
Trust
your
your
question.
gut.
Yes.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut. Okay.
Yeah.
For me, this is not necessarily something I heard. It's about something I read that changed the way that questioned everything that I know. And
read the question again.
What have you heard recently that caused you to question what you know?
Okay. Answer.
So I read the book Invisible Women.
Oh yes,
it's a book about how women have been historically, presently, and probably in the future have been excluded from the way we think about and move about in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished the book on Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. And I feel like everything in that book made me question everything that I think about the way that we move in this. It made me question about how we think about like medicine.
Mm-hmm.
The studies that they do on like the different types of drugs and prescriptions and just like health in general mostly is based on men's data. For example, Viagra has shown in previous studies when it first came out that it could reduce PMS symptoms in women. But because it had the adverse, it heal or
enhances
ED performance for men.
Yeah.
But because of that, they flew with it. And so like when the doctor who conducted the original study has been trying to get grants to do another study about specifically on women, to figure out like how, like what, to see what the future results could be. Like he hasn't been able to get a grant because nobody cares about women essentially in this data. And it's just like half the world's population deal with PMS systems. And it's like, it can be debilitating.
Yeah.
But like there's a potential drug on the market that could prevent those issues for women, but nobody wants to study it because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And just like other things like that, the way we think about public transportation, pandemics, and just like disasters, and how women are adversely affected in it after like the outcomes for women after major disasters plummet.
Yeah.
Every single time. And it's just like, it literally questioned everything, like every single thing. Every time I hear a commercial about this has been clinically proven, I'm thinking about like, okay, so who was included in that study?
Yeah.
Was it mostly men?
Yeah.
Because the thing that also surprised me was like how many studies only included men in those drug trials, in those clinical trials. And I'm just like, there's a whole other half of the population.
Yeah.
Even like fitness watches are based on, and we think about how technology is evolving, how health is evolving, like a lot of this data is based on men data.
Yeah.
So it's just like when my Garmin is acting up, I'm just like, now is this because this was based on a men's heart rate, or you're not like it has literally made me question every single thing.
Oh my god.
Every single thing. So Like
knowing you and knowing that you read this book, and I can feel the fire. I can feel the fire coming from the over to this side of the screen. I'm mad for you. Well, because I am
it's
a woman as well. So
yeah, it's just like, and the frustrating thing about that book also was the fact that there was no real solution. So it just
yeah,
kind of let flat. I mean, it was great to learn some of this
eye
information that I
opening.
never knew before or never even considered. But like also there was no real
What's the next step? Yeah,
resolution. Like what
right.
can we do now to like push this forward? Another thing I just learned, I'm sorry, I just thought of this.
Keep going.
Crash dummies.
Yeah,
So most of the crash tests done in all of the cars have been based on a man's crash dummy. They
physique.
didn't make the first woman crash dummy until 2011.
What? That is
And women have been
absurd.
on this earth for so long. And it's just like
Yeah,
that was the first time y'all considered putting women. And
in the
then like
car.
it's not even really a woman. It's just a shrunken version of a man. And so like that's why in car crashes women have more severe injuries than men because they don't.
Mm, we're not set up for success in the car. Damn.
I'm telling you, like literally everything. I'm just like, I don't know what to do now with this information.
I feel like even before I knew that you were reading this book, hearing this does not surprise me because I feel like
Oh no.
I have a very jaded opinion on the way that things are skewed. I feel like a lot of things are skewed towards the affluent for, money talks. And so whatever you want, however you want to manipulate data, it can be done. Data
I
can be
agree.
manipulated.
Yes, agreed. I none of the things in this book surprise me, right? Because men have ruled the world, still rule the world forever. And so like
Yeah.
women weren't a part of those conversations when these things were being collected. But like now that we are, like how do we change that?
Yeah.
But also the thing that frustrated me again about this book is like mostly when we think about women, it's mostly going to be white women that we're thinking about. And so like imagine how much worse the outcomes are for women of color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's already bad because we're excluding women in general. But
Mm-hmm.
then add ethnic minorities to it. And it's just like, do we even have like what is the purpose? I know I've been like questioning my life for the last 4 days.
Well, you're a change maker, so if anybody is gonna shake the ground and rattle the cage, girlfriend, it's you. This could be the catalyst
This
right
could be the
now.
catalyst.
This
You're
could be the
right. This could
catalyst.
be the catalyst because I've been thinking about like what can I do in my world, in my business to change things.
Yeah.
I haven't come up with anything yet, but I have been thinking about it. So
Well, I feel like we covered a lot of ground for episode 0 and just getting to know us. We've started to uncover a lot of opinions, thoughts, topics, feelings. We got a little heated, we got a little silly, we brought it back around. This is I would say that this is probably what you can expect from us. I'll go a solid 87% of the time. I would say 100% of the time, but I'm also leaving room for growth and reality.
yeah,
And if one of us is having an off day.
yeah, agree.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts? Any final anything? It feels
I
good.
think it does. I will say, or ask you, the audience, out of the questions that I came up with or Anna came up with, we'd love to hear your answer to one or both of them. So tell us
Self-awareness,
what
or
you think.
what have you heard recently that has made you I feel like I want to change my answer, but we don't have time. I mean, we do have time, but we'll get into it maybe at another time.
Okay.
Because I think I went on a tangent, but that's how I operate. That's how I roll. So if you want to come back for more, start to think about your own contradictions, like what Kendra was mentioning. They can be anything. We want to hear about them. We want to hear from our people. And thank you for listening. If you like the podcast, please subscribe to the podcast. You can drop a comment, leave a review, connect with us on social media. We're at Heard Between. Keep coming back for more. Anything else to add as we vacate the podcast?
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Yeah.
See you
Bye.
later. Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you like the podcast, please like and subscribe, drop a comment, leave a review, and connect with us on social media at Heard Between. And we hope you keep coming back for more. Until next time.